April 22nd, 2025. Well, it looks like at the moment that the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has a bit of a bureaucratic, what we say, rebellion going on. I've been noticing the things that have been going on about the national security team for some time here, in terms of both him and Waltz also. And this whole thing about the various signal chat issues that have occurred. I still think there's a degree of potential internal sabotage, particularly with the Waltz thing. I'm still trying to figure that one out. And now we have Hegseth. This one he may have actually created himself. He had some kind of group that he put together prior to his confirmation when he wasn't Secretary of Defense. And presumably at that time, I'm not sure if he even held a high security clearance yet, or I'm not sure exactly when that was conferred. But the point is, he wasn't in the decision loop then. This was probably originally created about his confirmation and things related to that. And now, of course, apparently he then used it to have a conversation where he discussed some elements of the ongoing effort in Yemen against the Houthis, and and apparently what's occurred is I don't know exactly, but a leak investigation got going some time ago, and finally this has led to his chief of staff and a couple of other key aides. I think also an aide to the deputy secretary of defense, all being fired basically, and sort of under the impression that they leaked something. um, I'm not sure exactly. It looks like that some of these people were people that he had previously considered to be friendly, let's say. But apparently, after being unceremoniously fired, they at least one or two of them have gone to the press, and that's led to, of course, the press and the Democrats and a few stray Republicans. This guy named Bacon in Nebraska. I'm not sure what his deal is, but another one of these grandstander Republicans, I think, that wants to, shoot his mouth off. Maybe he's got a district that's a little competitive. Maybe I have to look up which district he's in before I say anything more about that. But the point is that I thought all along there's going to be an effort among the bureaucracy to try to undermine Hegseth and run him out if possible. Because remember, this main reason he was there, I think, exactly, is largely over the DEI campaign to end DEI and go back to merit based, and that obviously there's got to be a lot of entrenched people who would benefit from that. Second of all, you have the fact that some other people that were pretty well thought of have been dismissed, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and so forth. And so I think there's clearly a bureaucratic backlash going on. And remember that the Trump foreign policy team doesn't necessarily stick with what the mainstream, the let's promote the war in Ukraine concept, and I think that's an underlying reason to probably to engage in this sort of sabotage. Plus, if anybody got fired because of whatever reason, handled a little roughly, they're going to want revenge just for personal reasons. And so that's my sense of what's going on. I doubt that any, the whole idea of what the actual sensitivity of what he said was is hard to know. I doubt it has any long-term sensitivity. But a lot of this stuff is time sensitive, meaning it's really when it would get into the hands of an adversary would matter. After the bombs have dropped, it's probably not that sensitive anymore. Um, well ahead of time, it might be very sensitive, and at some point in the middle, it becomes murky. Whether even if an adversary could get a hold of it, would they do it? And I think there's also been some confusion about the use of the encrypted signal app for any kind of official conversations. That my sense on that is that it's okay to use it for things that are essentially unclassified but sensitive, maybe perhaps, but it's not appropriate to use it for things actually classified. Sort of like that. I get the feeling otherwise, what are you using it for exactly? It probably would be smart just to say and of course, because it isn't a classified system, people that don't have clearances, such as maybe his wife and people like that, that apparently got in this latest rumor, could either inadvertently or deliberately get somehow in there, where presumably the government secure apps on a government phone presumably would not allow that because they wouldn't have access and they wouldn't be on the access list or whatever. So, but it looks like they're trying to push him out in order to weaken Trump's position and therefore try to get somebody in the Secretary of Defense job who would be more willing to oppose Trump on various issues and might even do things against his orders behind the scenes like he faced in the first administration. So, because remember, a lot of these people are really wed to this conflict with Russia concept, which kind of is a legacy of the conflict with the Soviet Union concept, which is not the same thing. But since it's become such a deal, I'm sure that's a lot of what's actually leading to this whole thing. So anyway, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me on Rumble, and of course the address there is in the description below. So that's kind of, I think Pete's going to have a bit of a battle here because you're going to have a few renegade Republicans also joining with the Democrats are 100% pretty much on fighting him. And remember, there's a lot of Democrats in the bureaucracy over there in the Pentagon. There's a lot of the career people, I mean, so, that's going to be a problem that's going to rear up for a while, and we'll see how that plays out. You could argue that overall, I don't see Hegseth as a great defense thinker, really. But I, I won't even go any further on that. But he is somebody that's loyal to Trump and certainly will carry out his viewpoints on personnel issues, which I think is the main reason he's there. And we'll see what happens when we get into more complicated strategic issues, like what happens with this Golden Dome concept. Does that really go anywhere or not? Because a realistic attempt to do something like that would be very expensive and probably still wouldn't work. Then you have the issue of other, other issues about shipbuilding, and of course we have the new fighter plane, the F-47, and presumably a Navy plane is on the way, and that's still hasn't been announced yet. I have a sort of briefly I'll mention a little theory I have on that one, which may be wrong, but I kind of wonder if that what occurred was that the Navy was actually leaning in the direction of going with Boeing as their contractor for the FAXX, and because after all, Boeing is really the old McDonnell aircraft from many decades ago. Really, which was a premier Navy contractor along with the old Grumman. But today, Northrop Grumman, although they have the Grumman name, I don't think much of Grumman is really left in it, really. and they have a lot on their plate with with a B-21 bomber. They have shipbuilding programs. They have a lot, and I think maybe that they were heading in that direction. I'm thinking, and then the Air Force then surprised them by picking the Boeing concept for the F-47. And as opposed to the Lockheed Martin concept. And that, I think, surprised the Navy. They weren't expecting that. Now they're asking themselves, do they think that Boeing can handle both? Since they haven't really built a primary, a really new design in many years. I mean, you go back to I guess what would be the F-18, which was a derivative of a Northrop concept before they merged with Grumman, the YF-17. So I'm just thinking, maybe they thought that Boeing had a little, so they're reconsidering. That's just a guess. I don't have any inside information at all, but it might be what may have thrown them off a little bit. And the other issue is the fact that if they want a really long-range plane, it seems like everything's focused on this idea of fighting a battle over Taiwan. Yet the Chinese have long-range missiles that can attack aircraft carriers further out than the combat radius of a plane that would actually fit on the carrier deck, and that becomes a real issue, I think, in the planning. But anyway, I'll digress a little bit on that since we kind of broached into defense topics and all that. So anyhow, on other issues, we also have the day that I guess it would be yesterday actually when you see this, or a few days ago. Trump again made another attack on the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, and in a Truth Social post, And I'm sort of like, well, my attitude to Trump on this is the following. If you're really going to fire the guy, then fire him. Otherwise, shut up about it. I mean, all you're doing is disrupting the market, and it isn't going to affect what Powell's like to do anyhow, because he knew he wasn't going to be reappointed to a third term as Fed chairman back during the campaign if, in fact, Trump were to win. So he knows he's out next year anyhow. And he's already had, what, 7 years? I don't think it's like he can't go get a much higher paying job if he were fired. So he's sort of in a, what you might call, undeterrable situation. So agitating the guy even further isn't going to change anything, and it isn't likely to change his policy, in my opinion. So why keep publicly talking about this, which is only going to disrupt the markets and not. And in fact, if he had a desire, as I've seen on some conservative postings, that the desire was really to ultimately move money from the stock market into the bond market to lower the interest rates on the national debt, well, that's clearly not working. Largely because the tariff program is causing foreign nations to start selling our bonds, I think, and that's not what we wanted. But at any rate, I don't want to get too deep into that. But I just think act, don't talk, is my opinion on that one. If you're going to do it, my advice would be don't fire him. Just let him serve out his term and agitate him as little as possible. Finally, speaking of things that have kind of gone in a bad direction, the Supreme Court ruling that came out over the weekend, and basically put a halt on the deportations of Venezuelan illegals, at least the gang members. I was saying all along, I don't know what to do about this thing. It looks like the court is sort of reacting against Trump here, and it looks like everybody's on board except for two conservative justices, Alito and Thomas, but the rest of them, including the three Trump appointees, and of course the liberal Democrats are, and then you have also the Chief Justice, who's always been, Roberts, who's a little bit. So this is not good, and that's why I was saying all along I thought it might have been smart, even though the Democrats may be hurting themselves politically by this support for this Garcia guy down there in Venezuela, and I guess that's the way the administration is playing it. Although I don't know what that translates to ultimately. I mean, that is a good question. Looking at polling, what I'm seeing here is a divergence in polls. If you look at the Real Clear Politics average, I mean, you have the more conservative-oriented polls have Trump up, like Rasmussen has him up 6 points. On the other hand, the liberal polls, such as Quinnipiac, has them down, I think, 12. So that right there, you're looking at, I think, so you've got just a major divergence. The average of all those ones they track is 3.4% unfavorable, which may be close to truth, I suspect, at the moment, given everything, all the hot air. But at any rate, that's I just think all along I was saying maybe it would have been smart just to have immediately brought the guy back, since we're actually admitting it was a mistake to put him on that list, bring him back, and then reprocess the decision, because it's all about process anyhow. And remember, courts really care more about process, I think, than they almost care about outcomes for the most part, which is one of the reasons I'm somewhat critical of the whole judiciary, regardless of its ideology, is that they're so process determined that the actual decision is about preserving the process more than the actual outcome for the country, But the judges tend to be temperamental, and, well, I think that's what we're beginning to see here. So, although we'll see what ultimately comes in the thing, but I think that needs to be handled with care at the moment. Even though, of course, Garcia should be kicked out of the country. I'm 100% believe that. Like I went that in my last video, but I'll still address that. And of course, I guess last of all, I guess the Russians declared a 30-hour truce over Easter, and then both sides are accusing each other of breaking it. So who knows there? But so at any rate, the war's back on, so it doesn't look like it's going that well for the peace process. So anyway, I'll be wrapping this up for now, and I'll be posting this as always on YouTube and Rumble, and the rest of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for now.